Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling video podcast here on YouTube. As I said before, working on other areas to expand the audience, but we're not going to go too far into that here and now. This episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle is going to focus around WWE NXT for July 12th, 2017, and it was an okay show. I'm not going to say it was a great show. Like, usually, these are really good shows each week. I wouldn't say that so much here. In that sense, you did have a very good match at the beginning, though, with Aleister Black and Bobby Fish. The crowd popped for Bobby Fish. I've heard of the name. I've heard of the name in the independent scene. I hadn't really been able to watch him yet. So this is kind of the first time I've gotten to see him in any way, shape, or form. I liked what I was seeing, though. These two put on a pretty good match. This was a good match at the beginning of the show with Aleister Black and Bobby Fish. I like the thing that Aleister Black does to set up the Black Mass after he's knocked someone down and almost out. He picks them up with their foot, then hits them with the spin kick. It's a great way of doing it. I like the stuff that I saw from Bobby Fish as well. So we'll see how what they have for him going up next for everything, because they haven't really done much with some of those guys that they've been bringing in, especially like Drew McIntyre and everything in that sense. He's never really had a feud, though. We'll talk about that later. So you had a backstage segment. Actually, you had a couple like interview backstage segments. First off with Cassius Ohno and Hideo Itami, kind of furthering on their tension and feud and everything in that sense, and kind of building off of what they're going for and everything in that feud. And it probably is going to lead to some kind of match between the two of them at the Takeover in Brooklyn or something in that sense of everything. Decent enough segment here, but nothing too much about it. Up next, you had the Velveteen Dream. He was going to get interviewed at first, but he was kind of having none of it, saying it's like, this is not a proper place for an interview and everything in that sense. So he was kind of just having none of it and kind of taking shots at the interviewer and everything in that sense of it to go along with it. I thought that was pretty decent. It was pretty decent character work for him and everything in that. So that was decent enough. Up next, you had Vanessa Bourne going up against Jamie Hatchery, as my phone goes off there for a brief moment. And this was billed as a Mae Young Classic qualifier as well. I think they had filmed another one, but they just put it on like the YouTube channel or something like that. But they decided to air this one on NXT TV. It was a rather quick match. It was decent enough with Vanessa Bourne going over. So they officially have her in the Mae Young Classic. So it was kind of their way of announcing her being in the Mae Young Classic as one of the competitors. So after this, you have not necessarily a backstage segment, but just like they show video footage from the week before of Drew McIntyre. He was leaving the building. And as he's going to his car, Alexander Wolf is just like there on his car. Drew McIntyre kind of threatens him. Everything in that sense. And then Killian Dane attacks him from behind. So you kind of have this thing between Sanity and Drew McIntyre, which it does actually play off into something that they're going to have next week, because the William Regal has Bobby Roode inside of his office. It's like, you want to know who your number one contender is, everything in that sense. Because you have two undefeated people such as Drew McIntyre and Killian Dane, and he basically, like, Bobby Roode plays it off as like, yeah, you should have both of them in a match or something in that sense. It would be great to see everything to go along with it, which William Regal was like, yeah, you're right, that would be a great match, and next week they're going to have that match, and it's for your number one contendership, which I think they kind of spoil it at the end of the show. I'll talk about that in a little bit, unless they're going to have a different person actually working off of everything. But with whom shows up to go along with it, I don't know if that's going to necessarily be the case. So I think they kind of spoiled it at the end of the show. Who's going to probably win that match next week between Drew McIntyre and Killian Dane. But before the main event, which was the tag team title match, you had Johnny Gargano come out and he came out to DIY's music, everything in that sense, and he basically cuts his promo about where he's going and what happened, everything in that sense. So he talks about Tommaso Ciampa, and then about where he wants to go. He's like, I have to look forward, and NXT TakeOver Brooklyn is next, is our biggest show, and I've got to be there some way, somehow, to go along with it. He talks about needing to get back to being Johnny Wrestling, everything in that sense. So it was kind of him saying, it's like, I'm back. And after he cuts the promo, I don't know how to really describe his new music, but his new music plays after the promo. So he came out to DIY's music, and then a new variation, a new song, not new variation. DIY's is completely different actually to that, but his new music played after the fact. So this leads in. Oh, and before I even really go further in there, I thought that was a pretty good promo from Johnny Gargano. That was actually one of the highlights of the show. That and the Aleister Black Bobby Fish match was really good. So this did lead to the main event, which was Heavy Machinery going up against the Authors of Pain. This is a little underwhelming. It felt like the finish kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't feel like it. Like, when you get title matches in NXT, they have that bigger feel to it, and everything to go along with it. This match didn't really get to that point. Like, you're initially amped, it's like, yeah, we're going to see a title match for the tag team titles, everything in that sense. Like I said, when you have title matches on NXT TV, it's treated like it's a big deal in the sense of everything. And usually you end up getting a really good match out of it. Not so much here between both of them. It shows that Heavy Machinery still got a little ways to go along with everything. And before they can probably be considered a real top contender or everything in that sense for the tag team titles. The match was fine, but like I said, the finish felt like it kind of just happened out of nowhere. It was almost like a typical ending to an Authors of Pain match versus like how they have to set up the finish or something in that sense with their other matches on TakeOver and in their matches, like with the triple threat with DIY and the Revival, or just DIY in general. It felt like this one just was like, oh, it happened. Oh, okay. So after the match, Sanity comes out. So you have Alexander Wolf, Killian Dane, and Nikki Cross come out. And they basically stand at the ramp. Everything in that sense. And as like their music's playing, everything, the lights kind of dim out. And then all of a sudden you just see pages, like book pages, falling from the roof. Kind of describing it as like they took the Book of Dominance or the Book of Pain, and they've torn it up, and the pages are just falling to the ground. As like the Authors of Pain are kind of like, and that's how they played it off on with the Authors of Pain as well. Is that they were angry about this, like what did you do, type thing to what was theirs, to go along with it. And I thought that the final visual was pretty cool. But that's where I say that they probably gave away who's going to win that number one contendership match with the fact that it was Killian Dane and Alexander Wolf out there, making it seem like those will be the guys going after the tag team titles at TakeOver in Brooklyn, to go along with it. So it makes it feel like, okay, Drew McIntyre's going to probably win the number one contendership next week. I mean, you don't know where they're going to really go, but Sanity's looking that they're going to go after the tag team titles at this point in time. So that was actually a decent visual to finish off the show. But overall this week, NXT kind of felt a little lackluster, honestly. It felt like it was lacking something. I don't know what it was. I did like the Johnny Gargano promo, and I like the Aleister Black stuff as well. Like I said, the tag team title match was decent enough for what it was, but like I said, it just, like, finish happened. It didn't really have that build-up to the finish. It just kind of happened out of nowhere and everything in that sense. You didn't get that typical build-up that you get in a title match on those NXT shows. So it was kind of lacking in that sense of everything. So with that being said, everybody, that's pretty much everything I have for NXT this week. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day. And yeah, I think the next review I'll be doing is going to be Impact Wrestling. I believe I'll get to that probably tomorrow or something in that sense. So be in tune for that. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.